Some say 10 years is enough time to warm a heart. But for Jiang Changyi, 10 years of marriage only earned her a nowhere else to go from her husband's white moonlight, and a mom is so ugly from her own son. Today I want to share with everyone this story about misplaced devotion and awakening. In the 10th year of marriage, Chen Zhijing's white moonlight got divorced, and she traveled thousands of miles to the capital seeking shelter. Me parents have passed away, my clan looks down on me, Heng'er truly has nowhere to go. Chen Zhijing's heart softened. He brought her into the manor, and personally took care of her food, clothing, and expenses in every aspect. My son Chen Yan was even more delighted. Aunt Heng, you are so beautiful. I am going to marry a woman as beautiful as you in the future, but definitely not like my mum, who is unkempt all day long, ugly as hell. At that time, my daughter's high fever had just subsided. Upon hearing this, I turned and went to the study, writing a divorce letter. 3 months ago, a woman named Liu Heng fainted at the Chen Manor's entrance and was coincidentally discovered by Chen Zhijing returning from court, who carried her back to the manor. At that time, I was watching over Anan, who had a persistent high fever from catching a cold and didn't know about this. The servant sent to fetch the manor doctor never returned, so I had no choice but to go fetch the manor doctor myself. But when passing by Chen Zhijing's Hengwu garden, I saw all the servants gathered here, and even several renowned old physicians from the capital were huddled together discussing prescriptions. From the bits and pieces of gossip among the servants, I learned that Chen Zhijing, who had always been good-tempered, flew into a huge rage that day. Not only did he summon a renowned doctor for Liu Heng, but he also called almost all the servants in the manor to attend to her. I walked through the crowd into Hengwu garden, and the servants all fell silent, not daring to stop me standing at the doorway. I heard Liu Heng's voice choked with tears. My parents have passed away. My clansmen look down on me. Heng'er really has nowhere else to go. Brother Zhijing, I beg you, for the sake of our past affection, please let me stay. Chen Zhijing's voice carried heartache. All right, Heng'er, you can stay here without worry. No one will dare bully you, and I'll always be with you. Sweat mixed with tears dripped onto the ground. I didn't go in, but turned around and ran out of the manor, running through most of the capital's medical clinics, before finally finding a skilled doctor willing to make a house call. By the time Anan's illness got a bit better, it was already 10 days later. The maid reminded me, and only then did I realize I hadn't seen Chen Zhijing these past days, nor had I heard him express a word of concern for his daughter. As if possessed, I stepped into Hengwu Garden and saw the courtyard bustling with activity. People from Jinyu Pavilion were displaying bolt after bolt of exquisite silk. Chen Zhijing stood nearby watching with a smile, occasionally praising the fabrics and complimenting how bright the colors were, saying Liu Heng would surely look beautiful wearing them. Even my usually rambunctious and mischievous son was sitting quietly at this moment, looking at Liu Heng with admiration and affection. Heng, you are so beautiful when I grow up. I want to marry a woman as beautiful as you, just not like my mum, with her messy hair and dirty face all day long. She is so ugly. Liu Heng covered her mouth and laughed at his words, softly admonishing him. Yan, you mustn't say such things. The person from Jinyu Pavilion was perceptive and quickly chimed in. Madam is indeed beautiful. I've rarely seen anyone as pretty as Madam. The courtyard was filled with laughter and joy, warm and harmonious. Standing outside, I raised my hand to touch my own face. 8 years of wind and sand at the border town had long since left my skin rough and coarse. After returning to the capital, managing the household inside and out had exhausted me physically and mentally, so naturally I had no time to properly care for myself. The clothes on my body were still the ones made back in the border town, their colors dull, their style long outdated, completely out of place among the brocade silks and satins in the courtyard. The cold wind of early winter blew into my heart, abruptly awakening me from 10 years of devoted infatuation. That very night, I wrote the divorce papers and delivered them to his study. Chen Zhijing discovered them the next day. He rarely set foot in my courtyard, and now he threw the divorce papers at my feet. Heng'er is my old friend. Divorce is not child's play. Don't use this to threaten me. He decided I was threatening him, didn't even give me a chance to explain, turned around and strode away, leaving only his back. I thought it over and realized that divorce really wasn't child's play. So the next day I wrote a letter to my uncle far away in Songjiang, begging him to step forward and agree to my divorce and return home. Going back to Songjiang required taking the waterway, and when I stood at the ferry crossing, I felt a moment of disorientation. 10 years ago when I got married, I came here alone with my dowry from Songjiang by waterway, and later when the Chen family met with disaster, Chen Zhijing and I also boarded a ship here heading north to the border town. Now standing here again with family by my side, only to go home. Uncle was holding Anan's hand, bending down and patiently telling her interesting stories about Songjiang. Seeing me standing there in a daze, he waved at me. "Changyi, let's go." The old man over 50 wore a kind smile, and I couldn't help but feel my nose sting, quickly catching up with them. Watching the boat gradually leave the shore, Uncle sighed with emotion. "Everything in the past is over. Go home and live a good life. Our Jiang family isn't what it used to be, but we can still support you and the child." "Uncle, thank you so much." Back then, when my parents suddenly passed away, Uncle's family treated me like their own daughter, never refusing me anything. Later, when Chen Zhijing came to propose with the marriage contract from years ago, Uncle even prepared a generous dowry for me. More than 2 months ago, I sent a letter home, and he hurriedly came to the capital to uphold justice for me, scolding the Chen family for their ingratitude, forcing them to sign a divorce agreement, and even won custody of Anan. Uncle waved his hand. "We're family. No need for formalities, Changyi. Since you've chosen this path, then keep moving forward. Don't ever look back. Since your aunt passed away, my health hasn't been great either. I am afraid I won't be able to protect you for many more years." I tightened the cloak around me and nodded firmly. I'll never look back." Perhaps it was because it was too cold. The next day I had a bit of a fever as the boat swayed. In my daze I recalled some past events. My father was originally just an ordinary merchant in Songjiang City. By chance he saved Chen Zhijing's grandfather, who was being hunted at the time and was the Songjiang magistrate. The Chen family wanted to thank him with money, but my father died within 2 days afterwards because the arrow was poisoned. My mother was gentle in nature and had a very good relationship with father. She couldn't bear the blow, abandoned me when I was only 6 years old, and drowned herself in the river to follow him in death. Magistrate Chen felt very guilty, afraid that I would be bullied afterwards. So he arranged a marriage between me and his eldest grandson. He was a good person who repaid kindness, and knelt before my parents' memorial tablets to swear, "When Changyi marries into my family in the future, I will definitely treat her like my own granddaughter and love her dearly, and will never let her suffer any grievance. If I violate this oath, may my Chen family never recover from eternal damnation." Unfortunately, this magistrate Chen passed away 2 years later, and the Jiang family lost contact with the Chen family. After I reached the age of hairpin, no one from the Chen family came to propose marriage, so my uncle began looking for another good match for me. He said it was a good thing this marriage arrangement fell through. The Chen family was a prestigious household, while the Jiang family was just a small merchant family. If I married into their family, I might not have a good life. It would be better to marry someone of equal status in Songjiang, where my family could back me up. But at that very moment, Chen Zhijing actually came to propose, an elegant young master from a noble family. I fell for him at first sight and happily married into the capital. Just 2 days after she married into the Chen family, the crown prince was placed under house arrest, and Chen Zhijing, being a member of the crown prince's faction, naturally met a bad end, being sent to a remote border town to serve as a minor county magistrate. After my mother-in-law found out, she said I was unlucky, a jinx. I brought doom to my parents when I was at home. And just after entering their household, I brought misfortune to her son. On that sweltering day, I stood under the sun, being scolded and feeling lost and helpless. I could only look hopefully toward Chen Zhijing, who had rushed over, expecting him to defend me a little, but he just glanced at me and hurried inside to comfort his mother. Afterwards, he said he was worried about his mother's poor health and asked me to understand. In the capital where I knew no one, in this unfamiliar in-law family, I could only bow my head and agree. Later we went to the border town. The wind and sand there were severe, and having grown up in the Jiangnan water towns, I was very unaccustomed to it and fell ill every few days. Chen Zhijing's days weren't easy either. His superiors made things difficult for him. His subordinates were two-faced, and the local people had no trust in officials. All this left him overwhelmed with no time to care about me. To help him, I forced my sick body to attend various banquets, befriended the wives of those superior officials, and went to the fields with farm women during spring ploughing and busy farming seasons to win over the people's hearts. Fortunately, these efforts paid off. His situation gradually improved. To be a good county magistrate, he became even busier, handling many things personally, sometimes not coming home for 10 days to half a month. It wasn't until I got pregnant that he finally made time from his busy schedule to care for and accompany me. That should have been the best period of our relationship, barely worthy of being called harmonious and loving as husband and wife. The good times didn't last long. After I gave birth to our eldest son Chen Yan, Chen Zhijing's second younger brother rushed over from the capital, saying he was following mother-in-law's orders to take the child back to the capital to raise. No matter how much I cried and begged, Chen Zhijing told me to be obedient, saying that sending the child back to the capital would give him better teachers in the future, which was much better than staying in this border town. The night before second brother returned to the capital, I wanted to discuss with Chen Zhijing one last time whether we could wait until the child was older before sending him back to the capital, but I never expected to overhear their conversations. Sister-in-law is from a small humble family after all, not as sensible as Sister Liu. If it weren't for that unexpected disaster, you and Sister Liu might already have both sons and daughters. My footsteps stopped at the courtyard entrance, staring blankly at the two drinking together. Chen Zhijing didn't refute, just laughed self-mockingly. Coming to this border town, I am just glad it wasn't Heng'er. She has always been delicate. How could she endure this endless wind and sand? Later, after asking around, I learned she was Chen Zhijing's childhood sweetheart. The Chen and Liu families were well matched, on very good terms. The two had already been discussing marriage, but for some unknown reason, that Liu family girl suddenly married far away. Chen Zhijing, disheartened and discouraged, only then remembered the marriage his grandfather had arranged for him when he was alive, and went south to Songjiang to marry me. Everyone in the capital knew their hearts were connected, that they were mutually in love, and would surely be a loving couple in the future. Only I didn't know. Only I was kept in the dark. I was sick and delirious. Fortunately, there was a doctor on the boat returning to his hometown who had pills for treating colds. After taking 2 pills, my fever barely subsided. Anna was very worried about me, constantly making hand gestures, asking if I was feeling better. Looking at my obedient and sensible daughter, I felt much better in my heart, and softly comforted her. The days on the boat were a bit boring, and with the cold weather, most of the time I stayed indoors with my daughter reading books, occasionally going out for a walk. By the time the boat reached Songjiang, it was already over a month later. Looking at the familiar city gate, I couldn't help but burst into tears. The cousin who came to pick us up held Anne and said in a low voice, "Stop crying. If you cry, I can still comfort you. But if the child cries along with you, I won't be able to handle it." One sentence made me unable to hold back my laughter. This cousin, who I'd grown up with since childhood, hadn't changed one bit. When riding the carriage home, I lifted the curtain to look outside. People coming and going, bustling and lively, no different from my memory. "Once you get home, rest for a few days first. Then I'll have your sister-in-law. Take you out to have fun. These past few years, Songjiang has gotten quite a few new places to enjoy. When I have time later." My cousin spoke to me in a low voice while holding Anne. I nodded and agreed to everything. The courtyard where I stayed at home was still the same as when I was unmarried, cleaned spotlessly. My cousin's wife had a straightforward personality. She pulled me aside and chatted for ages before leaving. She even took Anne with her. After many years of marriage, she only had one son, and seeing Anne, she really took a liking to her, saying she wanted to take her back to dote on her for a few days. Strangely enough, Anne, who was always disliked by the Chen family for being dull and timid, seemed like a different person here. She smiled more, wasn't afraid of people, and when she left with my cousin's wife, she didn't cry or fuss, but was actually quite happy. Before, I was still worried she wouldn't adapt, but now it seems I was overthinking it. On the 3rd day after returning to Songjiang, my uncle gave me a deed. It was for a shop my parents had left behind from years ago. When I got married back then, all the property my parents left behind was sold by my uncle for cash that I took with me. Only this shop. My uncle said it was the first shop my father bought with the money he earned when he was young, and he wanted to keep it as a keepsake. Back then, I thought it'd probably be hard to return to Songjiang in the future, so I gave the shop to my uncle. Never expected that. After going round and round, it would come back into my hands. I wanted to refuse, but Uncle's attitude was very firm. You are raising a child alone and have no fixed property. How can I be at ease? How can your parents beneath the springs be at ease? Back then, I saw that Chen Zhijing had no real feelings for you, so I kept this shop precisely to give you a way out. Even if I don't give it to you now after I pass away, it'll still go to you. I accepted it with a smile, but when I turned around, tears streamed down my face. The garment shop my parents left behind has always done well in business, with monthly earnings more than enough to support Anna and me. After visiting the shop a few times, I suddenly remembered how I used to draw clothing designs when I was young. Back then, my imagination ran wild. I always had lots of ideas, and the designs I drew were all sorts of strange and unusual. I searched the storeroom for ages and actually found a chest of drawings I made before my marriage. I simply picked out two, modified them a bit, and had the embroiderers make 2 pieces to sell in the shop. Originally, I just wanted to try it out, but I didn't expect them to sell within just a day, and several young ladies even wanted to have custom pieces made. With nothing much to do, I'd bring Anne along to draw designs, supervise the embroiderers making clothes, and occasionally check the accounts, keeping myself happily busy. Unlike before at the Chen family home, where in that big household you had to be careful with everything you did, doing well was just expected, and doing poorly meant getting chewed out from head to toe. But now, no matter what I do, my uncle and cousin fully support me, and my cousin-in-law is even happier. Your designs are so good, you shouldn't be afraid of not selling them out. You should be afraid that others won't be able to buy them. Being praised by them like this, I gained confidence too, wishing I could just throw myself into the shop every day. As the business in the shop became more and more prosperous, I discussed with my family and bought the 2 neighboring shops that were up for transfer, planning to connect them into one. Everything was proceeding in full swing. Occasionally thinking of Chen Zhijing and Chen Yan would give me a sense of disorientation until I heard Chen Zhijing's name again. That was an afternoon half a year later. Several young ladies from official families came to order skirts. I was doing the accounts behind the screen and inadvertently heard their conversation. This Chen Zhijing is also lucky. The first thing His Highness the Crown Prince did after being released was to find a way to transfer him back to the capital for a position. Now he has even become a censorate inspector, touring on behalf of heaven. How prestigious. Hey, I heard from my aunt who came from the capital that this censor Chen had a girl he liked when he was young. The whole capital knew about it back then. That girl seemed to have divorced or became a widow. I can't remember clearly for that girl. Censor Chen even abandoned his wife who shared his hardships. Whether she divorced or became a widow, if they really loved each other, it would have already become a beautiful story. How could it wait until today? Their sincerity is lacking, yet they still put on a show for others to see. Just watch the spectacle and be done with it. The few people spoke and laughed quietly. I came back to my senses, looked at the ink dripping on the account book with a silent smile, got up and went to the back courtyard to check on Anne. I thought I'd just overheard some gossip, but didn't expect to see Chen Zhijing at home that very evening. Uncle sat at the head seat with a gloomy face. Chen Zhijing was in his official robes, sitting below with his head lowered. I handed the sleeping Anne in my arms to my cousin. In-law entered the room and paid my respects. Uncle's expression cleared up slightly. He stood up and instructed, "I'll wait outside for you. If anything happens, just call for someone." I nodded, and only looked at Chen Zhijing after the door closed. His face was full of exhaustion, and he had several more white hairs on his head. Come to think of it, although he is now a highly favored person, but accompanying the emperor is like accompanying a tiger. He has to be careful everywhere. It is far from as glorious as others see it. Chang Yi. Chen Zhijing rubbed his brow, said softly, "I wasn't home on the day of the divorce. I didn't know that Mother actually agreed to the divorce on my behalf. That wasn't my intention. Come back with me." "That is right." Those who agreed to the divorce were the clan elders and old Madam Chen, because a few days before the divorce, Chen Zhijing had escorted Liu Heng back to Qingzhou to pay respects to her parents and wasn't in the capital. Uncle felt that dragging it out could lead to complications. So, after discussing with me, he forcefully summoned the Chen family and pressed them to make a decision that very day. The Chen family originally wanted to wait until Chen Zhijing returned to the capital before discussing it, but old Madam Chen agreed without a second word, even saying harshly that my Jing'er could marry a merchant's daughter was only because your Jiang family leveraged your favor to get repayment. It is good to divorce. Don't delay my son from marrying a new wife this year. Lord Chen. I lowered my head, stepped back 2 steps, and bowed respectfully. Whether you agree or not, we're already divorced. The divorce papers that old Madam Chen signed on behalf of Chen Zhijing were sent to the government office the next day. Now there is no relationship whatsoever between him and me. Is it because of Heng Zhijing sighed, his voice carrying some helplessness? I already told you, she and I are old friends from the past. You are my wife. Why can't you understand me? If Lord Chen has nothing else, please leave. My expression remained unchanged, not wanting to hear about his past with Liu Heng. I'll send Heng'er away right away. Stop making a fuss. Okay. Chen Zhijing made a compromise. She has had a hard time since she married. I can't just ignore her. Chen Zhijing, I couldn't listen anymore and interrupted him. Marrying you, I've had a hard time too. The grievances I suffered in the past surged up like tidal waves. The child I gave birth to after 10 months of pregnancy was taken back to the capital because of one word from you, not raised at my side. They have no love or respect for me, only disgust, constantly wanting to acknowledge someone else as their mother. Chen Yan grew up by old lady Chen's side, influenced by her since childhood, and didn't like me. After I returned to the capital, I found he'd been spoiled rotten by the elders and was doing terribly at his studies, so I kept him in check at every turn and personally taught him to read, but he wasn't grateful at all. That little kid made no effort to hide his hostility toward me, spewing nasty words every single time. Chen Zhijing opened his mouth to argue. Back when he agreed to send Chen Yan back to the capital to be raised, it was because the capital had better teachers and better conditions. But then he immediately thought of Chen Yan, who'd been raised to be arrogant and domineering and had barely read 2 books, and fell silent for a moment. In the 4th year at the border city, there was a rebellion and you weren't there. The people all thought you'd run away. To calm them down, I had to step forward myself, but in the chaos someone stabbed me. The blade was poisoned. Bowl after bowl of antidote was poured down my throat. My life was saved, and the child was saved too. But Anan was not only born frail, she also couldn't speak. Everyone despised and looked down on her for being mute. Even her own family was no exception. I laughed quietly, my voice soft. Later, your attendant let something slip, and that is when I found out. Turns out you'd gone to Qingzhou to see that Miss Liu. Chen Zhijing's face turned pale as he dug out the events of that year from his hazy memories. That year, Liu Heng sent a letter from Qingzhou saying that her health had been poor since her miscarriage, and she wanted 100-year-old ginseng he had to recuperate her body. He was somewhat worried, so he quietly took people to Qingzhou to deliver medicine to Liu Heng and also to visit an old friend. But it was such a coincidence that right after he left, someone actually rebelled in the border town. He hurried back to handle the matter together with the garrison troops and didn't return home for a full 2 months. When he finally finished and went back, he heard about his wife being poisoned, but seeing she was fine, he thought it probably wasn't any serious poison and didn't take it to heart. Chen Zhijing suddenly felt somewhat regretful. Why didn't he ask a couple more questions back then? Why didn't he show some concern? Why did he have to go to Qingzhou of all places? Remorse surged into his heart, drowning him in it. Thinking of my sensible and well-behaved daughter, my voice choked up. For Anan's sake, I prayed to gods and Buddha day and night, sought doctors and medicine everywhere, but mother-in-law scolded me for being crazy, saying I was putting so much effort into a mute daughter. To keep you Chen family people from speaking ill of my Anan, I humbled myself everywhere, suffered endless grievances. Life in the inner quarters was difficult. I thought you didn't know about it. Turns out, it is not that you didn't know, it is just a matter of who it is for. Chen Zhijing's hand holding the teacup trembled, scalding tea spilled onto the back of his hand, and for a moment he was somewhat dazed. An'an was a child raised by the couple, and Chen Zhijing naturally loved her. When he first learned that the child couldn't speak, he had insomnia for several nights. Later, he also sought out many doctors, but the conclusions they gave were all pretty much the same. Later on, he thought, even if she can't speak, it doesn't matter. Could the Chen family really not afford to support even a daughter? At worst, he'd support her for a lifetime. In his own home, he couldn't let the child suffer any grievances, but it turned out that the place where his wife and child suffered all kinds of grievances was precisely the home that seemed warm and harmonious to him. Chen Zhijing put down the teacup in his hand and spoke hoarsely. "I am sorry, I didn't know you. Since we've already divorced, let's part on good terms." I got up and opened the door. "It is very late, Lord Chen. Please go back." The sky had already darkened. I bid farewell to eldest uncle and returned to my own courtyard, but I couldn't fall asleep no matter what. It is not that I never thought about telling Chen Zhijing about the grievances I suffered in the past, but he was always very busy, so busy that he'd fall asleep right after I'd barely said a few words. Over time, I lost the desire to say anything. Later, when I learned that he had an unattainable white moonlight in his heart, it seemed even less necessary to say anything. I looked down at the sleeping An'an, and for a moment I felt much more at ease. At least these 10 years weren't completely empty. You see, the dissolution of a relationship never comes from big fights and drama, but starts from can't be bothered to talk. She accumulated enough disappointment, but when she looked down and saw her sleeping daughter An'an, she suddenly felt at peace. At least these 10 years weren't for nothing. This line really hits hard. It is not a compromise, but the female lead's awakening from living for others to living for herself. An'an is her confidence and redemption. Handed. I thought after saying so much, someone as face-conscious as Chen Zhijing wouldn't come again. But the second day, when I returned from the shop, I saw him in the courtyard coaxing An'an. Uncle had a dark look on his face. Seeing me come back, he asked in a low voice, "What is he doing here?" During the divorce, his old lady despised An'an so much, wishing An'an wasn't of the Chen family bloodline. What is this act about now? At the time of the divorce, I proposed to take my daughter with me, and the Chen family disagreed. After all, even though she is a daughter, she still carries the Chen surname. But old lady Chen agreed right away. What is so precious about her? If your Jiang family wants her, we'll give her to you. She can take your surname. There are plenty of women who want to bear children for my son. Are we lacking this mute girl? Let him be. I didn't care. He is An'an's father after all. We have no reason to stop him. Adult matters have nothing to do with the child. At least, Chen Zhijing had always treated An'an quite well before, and An'an also really liked this Father Changyi. You are back. Chen Zhijing held An'an with one hand and carried chestnut cakes with the other. On my way here, I saw chestnut cakes, and thinking you love eating them, I brought you some. I glanced at them. They were made by a very famous shop in Songjiang, limited quantity daily. You have to go early to buy them. In the opposite direction from my home and the post station. Impossible to be on the way. Uncle snorted coldly and mocked. Since when does Changyi love eating chestnuts? This is the first I am hearing of it. Chen Zijing's hand offering the chestnut cakes instantly froze in mid-air, his smile forced. You used to always make chestnut cakes, I thought. I caught An'an, who rushed over, looked at Chen Zhijing and politely declined. The one who loves eating chestnut cakes is you. Lord Chen should keep them and enjoy them yourself. I turned and left. Uncle's voice came from behind me. With so many chestnut cakes, Lord Chen won't need to worry about dinner, so I won't ask you to stay for a meal, please. Uncle's tongue is indeed as sharp as ever. Chen Zhijing's inspection tour of Jiangnan would last quite a while. He came by every few days to see An'an, and seeing that I didn't stop him, he pushed his luck, often bringing his daughter to play at the shop. I was so busy my feet barely touched the ground and had no time to pay attention, so he'd bring his daughter to sit in the back courtyard reading. In my heart I hoped he'd leave soon, but unexpectedly before Chen Zhijing left, someone else came looking for me. A woman in luxurious attire took off her hood. Her gaze toward people carried arrogance, somewhat incongruous with her delicate and pretty face. You must be Jiang Changyi. I am Liu Heng. This short sentence pulled me back from my daze to reality. This was my first time meeting Liu Heng face to face. The beauty who once made a name throughout the capital, time had been especially kind to her, not leaving the slightest trace on her face. She remained dazzling and radiant. "Miss Liu," I nodded as a greeting, then turned to give a look to the person beside me. Liu Heng directly sat down on the stool beside her, her voice gentle. "I came from the capital just to deliver a wedding invitation to you." As her words fell, the servant behind her placed a bright red invitation on the table. "Congratulations." My heart was calm. I smiled and took the invitation. "It is just that my shop is very busy. I am afraid I can't get away. I don't know where Miss Liu is staying. I'll have someone prepare a wedding gift later. Consider it an early congratulations on your marriage. I am naturally staying at the inn with Brother Zhijing." Liu Heng's words were interrupted by Chen Zhijing coming out from the backyard. "How did you get here?" Liu Heng was stunned to see it was Chen Zhijing, her gaze moving back and forth between us. "I reached out to hold An, said softly. "Miss Liu, don't misunderstand. Lord Chen came to see the child. Since you and Lord Chen are staying at the inn together, I'll have someone send the wedding gift to the inn." "What wedding gift?" Chen Zhijing frowned slightly. Liu Heng broke into a smile, her face showing shyness. "Our families have arranged our engagement. When you return to the capital, we'll get married. It is the parents' order and the matchmaker's word. You promised me back then, and now we can finally say our hardships are over." Chen Zhijing's expression changed repeatedly, looking extremely unpleasant. "When did I agree to this? Back then was back then. Now we've both already married. I have a family. There is absolutely no way I'll marry you." Liu Heng's face instantly turned pale, looking at the man before her in disbelief. I covered Annan's ears and brought her onto the carriage, then looked at the servant. "Go tell them to argue somewhere else. Don't affect my business. If they damage anything, make them pay for it." The servant agreed and hurriedly ran into the shop. I didn't look at the two of them anymore and had the coachman drive back to the residence. I thought that now that Liu Heng had come, Chen Zhijing shouldn't come to my door anymore, but that very evening he came again. The rain was pouring like a waterfall. I was just about to rest when a servant came to report that Chen Zhijing was standing in the rain outside the residence saying he wanted to see me. I thought about it and still went to meet him with an umbrella and lantern. Chen Zhijing stood outside the door looking somewhat disheveled, his voice hoarse yet urgent as he explained, "Chang Yi, I've never thought about marrying again. In my heart, you are forever my wife. When I return to the capital, I'll explain this to mother. I won't marry Liu Heng. That is your business." I stood inside the door, holding an umbrella. "It has nothing to do with me." Chen Zhijing leaned against the door, opening his mouth guiltily. "Chang Yi, I wronged you in the past. But in my heart only. You are my wife." As he spoke, he couldn't continue anymore. Tears and rainwater mixed together, dripping onto the ground. "I've always been curious. Back then you and Liu Heng were in love with each other. Why didn't you get together?" I asked the question that had puzzled me for years. Chen Zhijing probably didn't expect me to ask this question, and was stunned for a moment. I chuckled softly and answered for him. "Is it because you already knew that something might happen to the Crown Prince, that you, being part of the Crown Prince's faction, would be implicated, and you were afraid that Liu Heng would be dragged into it, which is why you didn't marry her?" I only found out later. During that time, the Crown Prince frequently angered the Emperor. Chen Zhijing had been the Crown Prince's study companion. He understood this father and son well, so it was natural for him to guess the Crown Prince would get into trouble. Chen Zhijing's already poor complexion became even paler. The answer in my heart was confirmed. I couldn't help but think of what he said to his second brother that year, and couldn't help but laugh self-mockingly. "Chen Zhijing, I was also pampered and spoiled growing up at home. The wind and sand in the border town was so harsh. You only felt fortunate that the one suffering with you wasn't your beloved. Did you ever for a moment want to protect me when I was called a jinx?" Very few people knew the inside story about Chen Zhijing and Liu Heng's matter. Many people thought it was the Jiang family leveraging a favor to demand repayment, forcing the Chen family to fulfill the marriage contract, which led to the separation of this ill-fated couple. Even old Madame Chen believed this, and she hated me, this jinx who brought bad luck to her son, tormenting me at every turn. Yet Chen Zhijing knew better than anyone why he married me. but he never said a word in my defense. I didn't look at Chen Zhijing again and reached out to close the main gate. Since the ending was already decided, what the answer was no longer mattered. A month later, Chen Zhijing, the inspector of censors, finally left. Before his departure, he had someone deliver a letter. I didn't read it and had the servants burn it directly. Me days returned to peace, and as Anan grew up, I forgot quite a bit of my memories of the Chen family, but Chen Yan actually wrote me letters. At first, he asked how Anan and I were doing, and later, seeing I didn't reply, he wrote about how badly he'd been doing these past few years. After Chen Zhijing returned to the capital that year, there was turmoil for quite a long time. He didn't want to marry Liu Heng, so old Madame Chen threatened him with her death, which finally forced Chen Zhijing to relent. After taking a wife naturally comes having children. His own mother drugged her son to make the couple consummate the marriage. Somehow this matter became known throughout the capital and was passed around as a joke all the way to Jiangnan. I heard about it too. Liu Heng quickly gave birth to a son after marriage. Having her own biological son, she naturally found every fault with Chen Yan, this stepson ostracizing and ridiculing him at every turn. Chen Yan at this time seemed to finally remember that birth mother in his memory, sending letters one after another to Jiangnan. After knowing these things, I no longer read the letters and directly burned them upon receiving. I didn't deliberately inquire about the Chen family's affairs anymore. Occasionally hearing some gossip, I just laughed it off. Until the year Anan turned 13, a major incident happened in the capital. The crown prince showed disrespect before the palace. The emperor was furious and punished him with confinement for reflection. It wasn't really a big deal, but couldn't withstand someone instigating, saying the emperor favored his youngest son and wanted to replace the crown prince with the youngest son, that rather than becoming fish on the chopping block to be slaughtered at will later, it is better to strike first. The crown prince was also in a fit of anger. Upon hearing this, raised the banner of clearing the emperor's side, wanting to force the palace and seize the throne. But ginger is still spicier when old. This rebellion was quickly suppressed by the emperor. The crown prince was deposed, committed suicide in the imperial prison, and all family members were confined. Officials of the crown prince's faction were liquidated one after another. Those who instigated conflict between the imperial father and son had their homes raided and 3 generations exterminated. Close associates had their homes raided and were exiled. Those with connections were dismissed or demoted, and the Chen family was among those whose homes were raided and exiled. When I learned this news at home, I was quite moved, because the place the Chen family was exiled to was exactly the border town. Anan was very worried, after thinking it over, had someone send some silver to the Chen family. She was afraid I'd be unhappy, and wrote a long string of words on paper to explain. I watched, not knowing whether to laugh or cry, and gently comforted my daughter. You still remember the good your father did for you, and want to repay him. How could I be angry? I only feel grateful that I brought you back to Songjiang back then, and had you take the surname Jiang. A single document severing family ties meant Anan had nothing more to do with the Chen family. She has the surname Jiang, is my daughter Jiang Changyi, and has no relationship whatsoever with the Chen family. Anan was very happy to hear this, and attentively offered to massage my shoulders and pound my legs. Outside, the cold wind howled past. Inside, the charcoal fire crackled, warm as spring, another Lunar New Year festival, past events like wind, long since scattered. Extra chapter: the Chen family was exiled right on New Year's Day. By rights, criminals shouldn't be exiled at this time, but the furious emperor couldn't care less about that. With one word, he had them set out in the heavy snow to head for the border town. The adults and children in the family cried together. Chen Zhijing looked numbly at these family members. At this moment, a thought suddenly came to him. Jiang Changyi was right to divorce him. Otherwise, she would be among this crowd today. She had already suffered so much, the rest of her life should be spent in peace. Chen Yan cried and shouted the whole way. He didn't want to go into exile, he wanted to go to Songjiang, wanted to find his own mother. No one paid him any attention. In the end, Chen Yan started asking Chen Zhijing like a madman why he had to go into exile, why Anan didn't have to be exiled. Then Chen Yan was severely beaten by the guards escorting the prisoners. After behaving himself for a while, he started blaming all of this on Liu Heng. "It is all your fault. If you hadn't instigated back then, my mother wouldn't have left me." Liu Heng had been in a daze all along, but Chen Yan's words were like a stone thrown into a calm lake, making her cast aside her manners and pride, cursing Chen Yan like a shrew. "Isn't it because you are stupid yourself, dumb yourself, actually thinking your own mother wasn't good enough, wanting someone you knew for just over 10 days to be your mother?" The two people who used to be so close completely became enemies, tore off all pretenses, cursed until they finally came to blows. Chen Zhijing didn't care about any of this. He was sick. Over these years he had already accumulated depression in his heart, and now it was adding insult to injury, being supported by others as he stumbled along with the exile procession. The wind and snow grew worse day by day. Family members fell one by one. First, the old madam died of illness. Then Liu Heng's son died young. And then Liu Heng, who had been abused by the escort guards, committed suicide. Chen Yan also fell ill, developed a high fever with no doctor and no medicine, died in just 2 days. On the contrary, Chen Zhijing, who looked like he wouldn't live long, actually persisted all the way to the border city before dying. He suddenly remembered that year when he was 18. Liu Heng was afraid of being implicated by him, hesitant and reluctant to speak plainly. Chen Zhijing, being such a smart person, naturally saw through it, so he took the initiative to say he already had a marriage engagement, wouldn't marry her, and told her to marry someone else. Afterwards he endured his heartache and went to Songjiang to seek marriage. That winter Chen Zhijing met Jiang Changyi for the first time. His fiancée Fei, the young girl, wore a goose yellow jacket, her smile bright and radiant. Uncle Jiang didn't seem satisfied with this marriage arrangement, his words laced with barbs, wanting to make him back off. Jiang Changyi got anxious, stood up and tugged at Uncle Jiang's sleeve. "I am willing to marry him." Chen Zhijing laughed heartily. He desperately stretched out both hands and grabbed wildly in the air, trying to catch something, but in the end he caught nothing and came up empty.